Hey everyone, welcome to today's session. We are going to be talking about strategic planning for business owners, and that is probably why you are here, because you are a smart business owner looking to strategically plan for the next year, 2026. So you can either have a new year or you can just have another year. Which one would you like to have? I don't know about you, but I'd like to have a brand new year. Actually, I wouldn't mind having another year like the one I just had. It was really, really good. I had a lot of things that I accomplished, and it was all because I was really dialed into a specific strategic plan. I read 42 books, and I know this because I keep track of all the books that I read. I published, I wrote and published 5 books. I didn't write it all in one year. I actually took part of 2024, but I published 5 books this year. The Time Wealthy Advantage, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and then the 4 supporting guides around sales and lead generation, the accounting guide, and then the strategic one sheets, and they're all really good. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I wrote them. I'm saying because that's the feedback I've been getting, and had a really just good overall productive year, just really really good. And all of that is because of strategic planning. So for those of you, I'm not saying that to sound impressive. I'm saying that to maybe impress upon you about how important strategic planning is, not just for your business, but for your overall life. So for those of you who are joining um, from different areas, let's see, we've got, Madison, hello. And Caroline, hello. We've got different people already. Let me know where you're coming from, like where are you at, and maybe what kind of business that you're in, or what kind of endeavor you're maybe thinking about starting for the new year in 2026. So we're going to get right into this. We have a lot to cover. There's a lot of information on this particular session because it really takes a lot of the different elements. And those of you who've maybe Birch, you're in Tampa. Very good. Or is it hold on one second. Let me take myself down here. Birch Masters Home Remodeling. Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, Birch Masters Home Remodeling. You are in Tampa, Florida. Very good. Welcome. And what do you specifically do? Obviously, home remodeling. Do you specifically do decks, full home remodels, home additions, things like that? Right. Love to know what it is that you do. We've got Princess. Hello, it's great to be here. Viewing from Toronto, Canada. Very good. Up in Ontario. Nice to meet you. I'm glad you could be here today. All right. And let me know too what kind of businesses that you guys are in, because again, it would be helpful for me to know so I can make some of this stuff relevant to you as we go through the session. Caroline, Houston, Texas, financial services. Welcome, Caroline. Birch Masters Home Remodeling. We specialize in full home renovations, redesigns, and custom new construction builds. Very good. All right. And I'm assuming you do that in the Tampa area. Probably have a lot of work from from the hurricane. And Brandon is also in Houston, Texas. All right, we got Texas representing today. All right, so we're gonna get right into it. There's a lot of stuff that we're gonna cover, and just a couple of things really fast is we are gonna be covering lots of different topics. But here's just a couple of things. We're gonna get right into the agenda. For those of you who have been here before, or maybe seen me speak before, you know that I kind of give some preface. We don't really have time for that, and not because that's a bad thing, but it's just because there's so much information. This is probably going to be a little over an hour, probably be, depending on how chatty you guys are, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes or so. But again, depending on how much you guys ask questions and so forth. Brandon is a notary and does remodels and renovations. Okay, very good. Let us know where you're from, Brandon. Oh wait, you're in Houston, Texas. Yep, that's all right. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to connect the dots there. So feel free, if you, a couple just housekeeping items real fast. First of all, don't multitask. Like, try not to multitask. I want you to stay plugged in for this period of time. I mean, if you thought enough of yourself to show up and be here on time and be ready to go, I'm going to really encourage you not to multitask, because switching back and forth into what I say and then what did he say that? Can you say that again? And not really staying plugged in. Look, I'm trying to teach you to train your brain to be highly focused. And I will tell you, I am a full card carrying ADHD member. And, I don't necessarily have the impulsivity, but I definitely the inattentiveness. And so that is just something that I have learned to be able to set that stuff aside by training my brain so I could write and publish 5 books in a year and read 42 different books. And people I hear saying all the time, "Oh, I can't read, I wander too much. I think about too many things." I'm just saying there's different things that you can do about training your brain to be dialed in. And this is just one way to do that, right? So you matter. I just want you to stay plugged in for the next little over an hour or so, because I just don't want you missing anything. All right. So just promise me on that one thing. And the other thing is too, is as you have questions that come up, ask them, type them into the chat. I will come back to them, and I want to make it relevant to you. I want to make it relevant to your business, because we're going to be covering a lot of different things here, and we're going to be taking a top-down approach. So I'm going to get right into the agenda so this makes a little bit more sense before I get into too many different concepts here. So the first and foremost, we're going to be talking about the systems, and the systems that are so important to the running of every single business. Systems are absolutely critical, but you also need to look at the psychology, right? This is the S&P approach that I'm looking at my businesses, in any business, that I work with folks who hire me as their strategist. It's the systems and psychology, right? And you need both of those approaches to really truly have a complete picture of what's going on in your business, and the well-running of a business, right? Next, we're going to look at the 4 core functions of your business, and that's true for every business that has to have these 4 critical functions. And then let's get into strategic planning, and that not just the planning, but also the execution. And then finally, we're going to be talking about some resources at the end that will set you up for success beyond today. So this is a strategic approach to planning, right? And it's not just the tactical little bits that you might be thinking about, like, oh, I'm going to use this sales tactic and this marketing tactic. You will hear some of that mentioned today, but strategic by its very nature is top down. So some of this stuff is probably going to seem a little repetitive to you, and it might even seem a little basic. But I'm just going to say, if you're not doing the basics, nothing's going to change. So if you're here to look for some advanced technique and you're not even doing the basics, I'm just going to say you probably just best to log off and save yourself the hour, because some of this stuff is going to be basic, but if you're not doing them, I don't know how else to help you. And I know you're like, this shiny object syndrome and people get bored and all this stuff. Look, we're talking about mastery level here. We're talking about being a master, and I don't know how you achieve mastery without boredom. It's the reps at the gym. It's the miles on the track. It's all of those things that people just don't want to do. That's the non-sexy stuff. So I'm just being honest with you. And I get this a lot when people start to say, like, I'll ask them for feedback on the session or whatever. I might be teaching at a conference, and they're like, yeah, it's all stuff I know I need to be doing. I'm like, okay, so what's your plan to do first? Like, what are you planning on doing first? Well, I just was kind of looking for that golden nugget. Well, I'm just telling you, the golden nugget is doing the absolute basics. So that's the strategic approach that we're taking. It's that top-down approach. And part of that planning involves creating a timeline. So we are going to create a timeline on how to do that. But first and foremost, what we're going to do before we get to any timeline, we're going to be talking about a business approach. This is the S&P approach that I was mentioning, and that's S&P approach is around systems and psychology, and you need to have both systems and psychology. The systems component is what we're going to unpack first. So my nose starts running all of a sudden. It's like clockwork. I click go on this on the webinars, and my nose starts to run. I don't know what that's about. It's like Pavlov's dogs. So that's the psychology piece. So let's talk about systems first and foremost. So systems involves what I wrote about in this book here, The Time Wealthy Advantage. So The Time Wealthy Advantage is a book that you can pick that up on Amazon if you'd like. If you live in the US and you'd like me to send you a signed copy, you can get a little bit cheaper too. If you want to go to strategicboardroom.com, and there's a couple of additional bonuses there. If you live outside the US, and I know there's people who watch this maybe on YouTube or on replay, and they see me, outside the U.S. I have quite a few people who do, which is very humbling, and I appreciate that. Your best bet is to go on Amazon and purchase it that way. They have a distribution network which is way bigger than mine, and they can get it to you a lot faster. So that would be the best bet. So if you're not here to necessarily sell the book, I just want you to understand the context in terms of where I came up with this Viper framework and where I wrote about it. So if you're really looking to get more granular on the Viper framework, you can get it in that book. But first and foremost, we'll talk about the Viper method. That is an acronym for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. And this is a life and business framework for business owners. And it's specifically for business owners. Well, why do I say it's specifically for business owners? Because not that other people couldn't make sense of this, but most people who aren't owners of businesses don't have direct control over things like infrastructure improvements or process improvements or changes in strategy or things like that, or how they execute on different things, right? They don't have that control, but business owners do. And the other thing that business owners often neglect, and I'm not like trying to tear down any other system, but like if you look at a system like the EOS, right? The Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS, which you may have read about in Traction. I think it's a good book. I think Gino Wickman is a genius, but I will say there's some gaps there. And one of the main glaring gaps is it doesn't focus on the individual human being business owner at all. And that's one thing that I think the Viper method does and does well, regardless of any business size. I also think EOS is massively overcomplex for most business owners who have less than 50 employees. I mean, even less than 100 employees, I think it's just overly complex. But that aside, the Viper framework works really with any size business, and it's specifically for smaller business owners. So if you're familiar with EOS, that's great. If you haven't read the book, read it and be your own judge. I'm not going to say it's terrible. It's just I think it's just overly complex. It just didn't work for me when I read about it. So let's get into the Viper framework, the Viper methodology, which is going to start with vision. Vision has two components, and that is personal vision and business vision. Now, personal vision specifically is going to ask you a question. And that question specifically is, where do you want to go, right? Brandon, where do you want to go? The owner of Birchmasters, where do you want to go? Caroline, where do you want to go? Princess, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go in life? If your life was not defined by income generation, and you didn't have to worry about income generation, you wake up with $30 million or 30 million pounds or 30 million euro, and there you are, and you wake up with that tomorrow morning, and okay, fine, go buy all the bougie crap that you want to buy, go book all the reservations for travel and everything else, and then let's say a couple of months from now, you're like, okay, you wake up, now what, right? $30 million is not that much money. Like, you can burn through that pretty quick if you're not a good steward of money. So you're still going to have to be productive in some way. Okay, fine. But if you're a good steward of your money, what would you want your life to look like day to day if it wasn't defined by income generation? Think about it from that perspective, okay? And then start to think about the business vision. And the business vision is going to say, cool, that's where you want to go. Now, how are we going to get there? Now we're going to reverse engineer that business vision to support that personal vision. And that way we can create something that really is truly something that we want. That's designed by what we want, and not necessarily has to make money, that you have to take on clients just so you can make $1. All right. And here's the interesting thing. I've sat in many masterminds and conferences and sat next to people who are legitimately making 6 and 7 figures a month. And I'm talking net. And they were absolutely miserable. And the interesting thing is, they weren't trying to figure out how not to be miserable. The thing that they were trying to figure out is how to get the next digit, how to get the next comma in their bank account. And I was like, dude, what in the world? Right? Now, if that's you, I'm not saying that's wrong, but that is definitely, I'm not saying that I'm anti-money, not at all. Money, it solves a lot of problems for me. But what I am saying is that when you're focused, when you're always focused on achievement and you're confusing it for fulfillment, that becomes the problem. As again, many people confuse achievement for fulfillment, and that was their problem. So what I'm just going to suggest for you is the danger in creating that business vision without ever considering a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. All right. So, and I'm just telling you that sucks. And if you're, I don't know how old some of you are on here. We had quite a few people join me just recently. If you are interested, just go ahead and type in where you're from and maybe what business that you're in, so I can make this relevant to you guys. But again, I'm gonna put the fries in the bag here on personal vision in just a second. I'm gonna get to the strictly business stuff here. So please just hang in there with me for just a hot second. But again, the danger in creating this business vision without creating a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. So here's what I'm gonna suggest, right? Is I want you to think about your personal vision in the context of a 100th birthday speech. And this is something that's really fun to do. And you might be thinking, okay, so you're turning 100 years old. All right. And it's interesting because I hear these people who are like in their 20s and they're like, man, let me make 60 grand a month and then I'll worry about that better life thing. Well, I'm just telling you, that was the same thing. And I'm in my mid 50s now. I'm 53 now. And I will tell you that I spent decades of my life chasing that exact thing. And I was just miserable. So I'm just telling you, please take it from someone who's maybe a little bit older than you that has made those mistakes, and plenty of people who sat next to me making a lot more money than me in my life, and they were absolutely totally miserable. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Come up with that 100th birthday speech, and I want you to think about it. You're turning 100 years old and you're going to make your life speech. Here it is. I want you to think about it. What exactly would you say? Who would you want to be in the room even? And what message would you want others to carry outside the room when you were done speaking? And finally, what would you want others to say to you after you were done? Like, hey, Caroline, that was such a great speech. I really enjoyed that, right? Another way to think about this, if you're thinking like, well, dude, I'm 20, I'm 25, or I'm 32. Like, I can't even think about that. I'm 53, and I'm like 47 years from now, am I really going to be able to put myself that far forward? Something that you have to understand from a psychology perspective is that's called future self continuity. Is the more likely that you can connect yourself to your future self, your current self to your future self, the more likely you're going to be able to hit your goals, right? And if you have more difficulty, that's called future self discontinuity. So maybe back it off from, say, not necessarily a 100th birthday speech, but like something that might be the next milestone for you, right? Maybe when your kids graduate high school, or maybe when you go to your next high school reunion, something along those lines. All right. So just thinking about that. Another couple things just to think about. And then, like I said, we'll put the fries in the bag on the personal vision is if everything in your life was going well for you, what would that look like? What would your faith look like? Your family and friends, what would those relationships look like? Personal growth, your fun, your contribution to other people, fitness, finances. What are all of those? Lots of F words in there, I just noticed. But what are all those F words mean to you? Like, if everything was going well, what would each of these areas look like for you? Right. And one final thing is just a set of questions here is if your marriage or romantic relationship was ideal, what would that look like? Or if your family life was ideal, right? Your health were perfect in every way. Or if your financial situation were ideal, what would all that stuff look like? So I always get this question. Hey, Shervin. It's okay, Shervin. We got started. We were talking about you, though. So I'm just letting you know. I'm just kidding. No, I'm glad to have you here. So the interesting thing, we'll just Happy New Year's Eve to you as well. So the thing that I want, and I know some of you are going to ask the question, yes, if you have signed up for this through Eventbrite, you will be emailed you'll be emailed a copy of this session. So if you're on YouTube watching this, or if you'd like to just go to YouTube, you can watch it there as well. But all of these different things I want you to start to think about in terms of your personal vision. All right. And even again, if your approach to faith was ideal, sorry, there was one more, but if your approach to faith was ideal, what would that look like? So all of these personal vision questions here, marriage, family, health, financial situations, faith, if all of these things were ideal, what would they look like? And then one final question is, what are just some things you look forward to? It's a simple question, but it's one that can certainly help you define and unpack your personal vision. All right, so we're going to put that down, and we're going to walk into business vision. So, all right, so again, business vision, and again, all of the main circuit breakers go through your personal vision. Okay, so let me ask you, what are some areas of your personal vision that you feel are really dialed in? Go ahead and put it in the comments. In terms of where you feel like, nope, I really got this dialed in. And I'm just going to say, like, in terms of personal vision, hello, Marlene, welcome from Memphis. Very good. I just want you to think about, like, what are some areas of your personal vision that you feel like you've got really, really well dialed in? Maybe it's your relationship with your marriage. Maybe it's your faith, right? For me, my faith is important to me. I feel like I've got that pretty dialed in. My relationship with my bride, right? I think we're good. Like we had some lulls during 2025, but we're really really good. But I really want you to think about that and then use that as momentum towards the other areas of your life where you feel like you need a little bit more of a push. Okay? So just to think about that, go ahead and put that in the comments if you feel like you'd like to share. That would be great. All right, so let's move on to the business vision component. There's 3 C's of business vision that you have to think about. And every time that I get hired in as a consultant or as a strategist for people who want me to come and help out their businesses, they are weak in one of these 3 areas, or probably all 3 of these areas. So let's look at Birch Masters Home Remodeling. I'm very dialed in with my faith and personal vision. I absolutely love that, Birch Masters. I wish I knew your name. I feel like Birch Masters is just so impersonal. But I'm very dialed in with my faith and personal vision of where I want the business to go. That's great. I just need to dial down on how to get there. Okay, and that's and there's lots of different approaches. Okay, we're going to get into some strategy and some important things. So what I'm going to say is right now, in terms of the 3 C's of business vision, there may be some of these areas here, Birch Masters, that might not necessarily be as dialed in as you think. Okay, and if you are, that's fantastic. But if not, this could be an area of growth for you. Okay, it's me, Madison. I changed the name to the company. Okay, okay, gotcha, Madison. All right, I was like, I don't remember that person coming in. All right. Well, hello, Madison. All right. So goes the 3 C's of business vision. They are core purpose, core values, and client avatar. And they're like 3 legs of a stool. You cannot have, they've all got to be equally yoked. All right. So let's unpack starting with core purpose. Core purpose is what business are you specifically in and what problems do you specifically solve? And it's really important that you be highly specific in your answers. If you just say, well, I'm a realtor, okay, that tells me nothing. That tells me like, okay, are you a realtor for the entire state of Florida? Well, yeah, realtors are basically licensed by the state, but that doesn't tell me much because you can do residential stuff, you can do commercial stuff, and different states needed different endorsements. I know this, but I'm just saying, for example, it doesn't tell me a lot. Do you do commercial leasing? Do you do property management? And do you try to do all of the above? And generally, if you're trying to do all of the above, you're not very well differentiated. And when you're trying to be something to everybody, you wind up being nothing to nobody. And that is we're going to talk about differentiation here in a little bit, but I'm just saying, if you don't have your core purpose really, really dialed in and be exclusionary to other things that you will not do, like it's like, yeah, I'll do anything for $1. The problem is you don't have pricing power. And trying to be everything to everybody is a real problem. So I'm saying, like, in your core purpose, people will come to me and they'll say, hey, Mark, can you just do my accounting for me? Well, look, I have a degree in accounting. That's my background. I'm also in school right now getting my PhD in organizational psychology. Could I come and be someone's therapist? Well, no, because that's not clinical psychology. It's not what I want to do. But my point is, would I go there and do on-site counseling for people? No, it's not what I do, right? It's not, I don't have an interest in that. I have an interest in organizational psychology and behavioral psychology. Like, to me, that's important, right? But I will be exclusionary in terms of what I won't do. I'm not going to do someone's books for them, even though I have skills around that. And like, yeah, but you can make $50 an hour doing that. I'm like, great. That would cost me $400 an hour based on my current billing rate. So why would I do that? Right? And that's my high-end consulting sort of stuff. So I'm just saying, you have to be a little obnoxious about what it is that you do, and more obnoxious about what you won't do. It's okay to be a little bit of a snob about your core purpose, because the more dialed in that you can be on that, it's going to allow you to be much more, take up more specific bandwidth, more specific mental real estate of people that you're trying to target. We'll get to client avatar here in just a second. So we talked about the core purpose. That's the core purpose. Next, we're going to get to core values. Now, what matters to you about this business, and how would the world be worse off if you went out of business? And I know right now, I get this all the time. Whenever I mention core values, and especially in front of a room, I can kind of see the collective eyeballs rolling in the back of the room. But here's the thing, and I know this sounds super squishy, But the reality is the core values of a company, and if you're trying to grow your company, and I know many people are trying to grow their companies, if they're trying to grow their company, or if you're specifically trying to scale your companies, you're going to need other people to do that. You're going to have to bring in other people. You can't just do this by yourself, right? I mean, you can bring in infrastructure and do some certain things, but you're going to need assistance to do that. People like CPAs, attorneys. I mean, even, people like me, people that you're even just going to have to hire to do and handle some of the other 4 functions of business. We'll get to those 4 functions here in a little bit. But I want you to think about the core values, because the core values, when you think about your core values, and those are very, very well defined, your core values define your company culture. And your company culture and your company brand have an inextricable link. And that is the reason why people are going to want to come shop from you and buy from you. And people are going to want to work for you. Think about the type of climate that Southwest Airlines has. They're the fun airline. People like to work for them. I mean, think of other companies that people like to work for. There's probably a local company in your town that has a really great company culture and owners that are just fantastic people, and people just like to work for them, right? That's really important to think about. So I want you to think about this in the context of the, what your company culture is going to be. And again, your business is just an extension of you. Right? So don't forget that. Because your business is an extension of you, I want you to remember that your company, your personal core values are going to be what defines your company core values. So you might be thinking, well, how in the world do I define my personal core values? Okay, well, I'll give you an example. Have you ever had for example, a person that was in your life that you had to let go out of your life? Maybe it was a romantic relationship. Maybe it was a friendship. Maybe it was someone even in your family. And you're like, look, man, you're heading down a path I can't follow. You're going down and you're doing things that I can't allow in my life. Right? Have you ever had this? Yeah. I mean, it's heartbreaking. If you've lived more than 15 minutes on this planet, right? Unfortunately, this is the sort of stuff that happens. And what I'm telling you is that those are the sorts of things that violated a core value for you, a core value. I value, and I use this analogy because it stands the test of time, but I value peanut M&Ms. I love peanut M&Ms, right? But if someone breaks into my office here and says, "Give me all your peanut M&Ms," am I going to go to war over it? No, I don't actually have any peanut M&Ms because I ate them all. But assuming I had some, I'd happily give them and go, okay, go on your way. But if someone came into my house, right, and was threatening to harm my family, it would be war, because that would violate a core value for me, right? So I'm just telling you, like, a value is something or a core value is something that you value that you're willing to take action upon. That's how I feel that something is a core value. And that is where, like, if you've ever worked for a bad boss and you're like, oh my gosh, I could never be like that. Okay. It might identify a core value for you. Maybe that boss was always late, right? Maybe that boss was rude. Maybe that boss was dishonest. Maybe they were inauthentic. Maybe they were not in integrity, right? They would say one thing and do another, right? All of these things, right, would help define these core values. So I'm just saying, take the time to actually go through this, because if you don't, your core values will be defined, but they will be defined by the strongest personality that's in the room. And if you're not always in the room, and you're not the strongest personality, guess what? It will be defined by the strongest personality in the room. And that is a recipe for disaster. So that's where you can get a cancer that grows and metastasizes in your own business, and you have to get rid of everybody that's ever touched that just to get rid of that bad organizational climate. It's really, really damaging to an organization. So, okay, so let's see. I got some questions here. Not sure what that was about. Maybe I said something hilarious. I'm going to go with that I was hilarious. And Onesimus, good to see you from Uganda. Excellent. Good. Glad you could join us. All right. So here's where, so we talked about core purpose. We talked about core values. Now let's get to the last C, which is your client avatar. Let me take a quick drink here. So as you're thinking about this, and what I want you to do is, as I write this last one, go through this last one, I want you to think about which one of these do you feel that you have dialed in, and which one of these maybe do you have some work to do. So I want you to think about this as I'm going through this last C. So the client avatar is who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? Like, who are they? Are they, are they a single person, like a single human being, not necessarily married or single, but are they a single human being? Like, who are these people? Or maybe they're a couple. Maybe they're a team, right? Maybe it's a sports team. Maybe it's a sales team. Maybe it's maybe it's a board, right? A board of directors, something like that. Maybe it's an HOA board, right? But whoever your avatar is, I want you to identify specifically and ideally who these people are. And I want you to identify them geographically, demographically, and psychographically. So let's go and unpack what that means. Geographically is obviously where they are. Demographically is who they are. Are they married? Are they single? Do they have kids? Are they rich? Are they poor? Are they educated? Are they not educated, right? Like, did they go to college? Did they not go to college? All the different things in terms of demographics. Those are really, really important. Then you break them down psychographically, which is how they think and how they buy. And when you're breaking down psychographics, I want you to think of the acronym ALIA, A-L-I-A. And that those are their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations, and their goals, right? Aspirations is goals. So think about that. So what are their attitudes on life, right? What are their lifestyles like? Do they have a jet-setting lifestyle where they're always out traveling? Or are they more like empty nesters and they just kind of want to spend a lot of time at home with their grandkids? What are their interests? Do they like NASCAR? Do they like World Cup? Do they like American football, or do they like European football, right? Whatever the things are that they're interested in, what are their interests? And finally, what are their aspirations and goals? If you know someone's aspirations, if you know someone's goals, don't you think that you might be able to help them in some way, right? Even if it doesn't have any direct link to your product or service, that is how you connect with folks. That is how you make a difference and you start occupying the mental real estate of people's lives, right? I mean, I know realtors that do really, really well at connecting and staying top of mind with people, especially with their avatar. Like, say for argument's sake, a realtor, let's say that their avatar are dealing with first-time home buyers, and they are, and the reason they're first-time home buyers is because they are expanding their family, right? They're having kids, or maybe they've already got a couple kids and they're bringing on a few more. So if that's the case, do you think that maybe they might be interested in local daycare, right, openings, or maybe, references to good babysitters? Of course, like all parents are interested in stuff like that. Or maybe a new daycare that's opening, or maybe a parents' night out that a local church might be hosting. Just drop your kids off for a little while, and they've got a bunch of kids that are going to be there from the community. That might be something that a single, or not necessarily single parents, but parents or first time home buyers might be interested in, who happen to be parents, right? This is the sort of thing that's really important, as to know your avatar really, really well in terms of all the things that might interest them. So it always gives you a reason to be in front of them, even if it doesn't necessarily match up with your specific core purpose. All right. So let me ask you this final question here. So this is the time for you to think about it. Go ahead and type it in the chat. What are you, out of these three, what do you feel you need to do some work on? And what do you feel like you've already kind of got dialed in? Like, yeah, I'm an 8, 9, or 10 on these. Maybe I need to write them down. Okay. I would say anything that's not written down, you can't really give yourself more than a 5, but I'll give you a pass here. But where do you feel like you're really dialed in and should be easy for you to write down? And maybe the other ones are not so dialed in, that you got to do some work on. So go ahead and write that in the comment section and share that, because I really want you to take, again, I want you to take some actionable things. I want you to take some action on these things as you're working through these, because there's no point in just taking this class just for the sake of taking the class. This is about actually moving the needle for you in your life. So go ahead and type that in. All right, so we've got vision, which is broken down to personal vision and business vision, and that is the vision piece of the Viper method. Now we're going to talk about infrastructure. Infrastructure is the bones of the business. It's the desks, it's the chairs, it's the software, it's things like that that are computer systems, phone systems, software, websites, things like that. A I did a class the other day. I think it was Tuesday or was it yesterday? Yeah, it might have been yesterday. Yeah, yesterday afternoon, which was marketing magic. And we really got dialed into the infrastructure of different components that you're going to need for like CRM software, like Pipedrive or, Salesforce. Salesforce is just the kind of way too big for most small companies, but, Go High Level, things like that, right? HubSpot. Those are really, really good CRM softwares for just keeping track of your customers. Like those are the sorts of things you need to start to think about if you don't have them. Otherwise, you're just going to end up doing stuff and writing stuff down on the back of a paper towel, right? This isn't a paper towel, but you're just going to end up going analog on things. I'm just telling you, there's so many things that software, and the software is so cheap now. There's no reason to do stuff that's going to be priced price competitive. Or it's going to price you out. There's no reason not to do this sort of stuff. All right. So Madison, let's see what Madison has to say. Madison's is dialed in on the client avatar and core values. Okay. Excellent. Definitely need to focus on the exclusions and what we don't do related to our core purposes. Yes. And I will tell you this is that when you start trying to be everything to everybody, the problem is that people lose track of what it is that you actually do. Right? The minute you start building decks and get away from home editions, and I know decks can get really, probably there may be more margin in decks. I have no idea, but whatever I'm saying, like whatever you're trying to stay within, and you start like, well, yeah, we went and hung some gutters, right? You're like, okay, so is that what you're doing now? Like that takes up bandwidth that is not. It starts to get very confusing for everybody in your world. Okay. We're going to talk more about that when we get to differentiation, but this is, I appreciate you being honest about that, Madison, because I'm telling you that it's really, especially as a strategist, it's very easy for people to say, oh, you're a coach, help coach me on this thing. And I'm like, hold on a second, right? Hold on a second. That's not really what I do, but I can, I often employ the tools of a coach. But sometimes I'm more of an advisor. Sometimes I'm more a consultant, right? Sometimes I'm more a teacher than I am a coach. So I really try to distance myself from that because let's face it, how many coaches are out there right now? All of them, right? And if you're a coach, this is no slap at you, but the problem is you're entering a very, very crowded field. And it's one of the main reasons why I pulled away from coaching. I was doing a lot of real estate coaching under Landlord Coach. I started that brand, published several books, published The Time Wealthy Investor, then The Judge, then Time Wealthy Investor 2.0. And then I started seeing a lot of ick on the surface of the water. And I was like, I don't want to be wading in this water anymore, right? I wanted to get away from some ick that was going on in that industry, in the coaching industry, especially with the real estate space. So I niched up a little bit and started working specifically with business owners. I like working with service-oriented businesses. I like working with restaurants and coffee shops. Basically service-type industries. Right. I've worked with fractional CFOs. I've worked with fractional CMOs, chief financial officers, chief marketing officers. Right. And these are the sorts of people that I really, really enjoy working with. And it doesn't mean I can't work with, I've worked with small manufacturers as well. Not generally a niche I try to be in, but my point is that because I've niched myself as a strategist, which is different than that of a coach, people look at me differently. And I want you to think about that for you is you want to get away from that Me Too service. Okay. So I know I'm going off script here and we're not talking about infrastructure, but that's really, really important. And we'll talk about that here a little bit when we come up with some strategy. So why does vision, we talked about infrastructure, the bones of the business, the desks, the chairs, the software, things like that. But why does vision come first? If infrastructure is so important to a business, then why does vision come first? It's because the vision is the main circuit breaker. Okay. So let's say for argument's sake that, Madison is, let's say Madison's vision is to lay on the beach for 2 months out of the year in Spain, rubbing cocoa butter on her belly. Okay? Fine vision. If she develops an infrastructure that requires her to return emails and phone calls in a timely manner, that's going to be a horrible experience for her when she's trying to lay on the beach, rubbing cocoa butter on her belly, right? that's why, again, the personal vision is the main circuit breaker. So you want to create an infrastructure that's in alignment with that vision. So that's why you have to create the vision first. All right. So it's like you've it's like you've known me forever. That's right. I've known you for, like, again, I miss you like a desert misses the rain. Okay. Um so it's good, but that is why vision has to come first. So I'm just saying, like, again, Madison, when you're thinking about your vision or your infrastructure, this is the sort of reason that you're going to have to put that, right? Onesimus, that's the reason that you're going to have to start thinking about your infrastructure, right? You start thinking about vision first, but build that infrastructure that's in alignment with that vision, all right? No one else really chimed in on the three C's. I would love to know what three C's that you're specifically working on. Shervin, didn't hear from you yet. Marlene, love to hear from you. Brandon, let me know. Caroline, Princess, these things are really, really important. And again, I want to make it relevant to you and just give you some encouragement, because again, pick the thing that you might be doing well at and use that as some fuel to help get the other thing beefed up a little bit. So we talked about vision and infrastructure. Let's talk about process. Process is simply how you do stuff, okay? And process is broken down into two main components. It's a tactical process and it's the strategic process, right? Let's look at tactical. Tactical is basically how you do things from day to day. It's your standard operating procedures. It's your checklist items, right? It's your day-to-day activities, from your opening procedures to your closing procedures. It's how you answer the phone. It's how you, like, your sales scripts. It's things like how you prepare bank deposits, and even how you reconcile the checkbook. These are all things that should be broken down very tactically, written down, kind of boring stuff from day to day, right? That's your tactical day-to-day things. If I were to take infrastructure and process, and specifically tactical process, and draw a box around them, that is your system, the infrastructure and the tactical part of process. And that is a really critical thing to consider, because when you look at this, and I want you to think of this as like your battleship. This is like your warship, and you're sitting in the harbor. Well, you don't want to just sit there in the harbor waiting to get blown around by the economic winds of whatever happens to come across the bay, right? You want to go take that boat out of the harbor. You want to go make some trouble. Well, that's what strategic planning does, right? With the vision and the system defined, this is how you can start to create strategy. So again, this is about strategic planning. So the strategic planning for business owners specifically, and now, okay, well, let's talk strategy. Let's be strategic. So strategic planning brings in three main components. And those three main components are people, purpose, and promotion. People, purpose, and promotion. So I want you to think about this, is that the people component are who you're going to need to affect your strategy, right? You might need a tax accountant. You're like, okay, I'm going to have more tax consequences. I got to bring someone in. I got to talk to an attorney. I might maybe bring some. I might need to hire someone to teach me how to sell better. I might need to hire a marketing company, whatever. But you're going to need people. But you're also going to identify specifically the people you're going to market to, that you're going to promote to, right? Who does that sound like? It sounds like your client avatar, right? So you got to have these people well defined. So it's people inside your organization, like your employees, like your vendors, like your suppliers. That would be important, right? But it's also the people outside your organization. It might be the people that you're that you're trying to target, right? It might be your competitors. Like, that's an important people component to consider, right? So these are all the things that are really critical when it comes to people. The purpose is related to strategic purpose. So what is the strategic purpose? Are you looking to increase market share? Okay, I could respect that. Are you looking to go into a completely new market? All right, fair enough. Are you looking to launch a new product or service in an existing market? Okay, or maybe even a new market altogether. That's fine, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, you have to start thinking about, okay, what are you trying to do? What's the whole purpose of this? Now, the strategic purpose has to be in alignment with what? It has to be in alignment with your core purpose. It has to be in alignment with your core purpose that you learned in that you learned or that we discussed in your business vision, right? Core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Your core purpose has to be in alignment with your strategic purpose, because if you're misaligned, it's going to get confusing. And when you're marketing, the confused mind will always say no. The confused mind will always say no. It would be like if Starbucks tried selling chainsaws. It would make no sense. People were like, what? Okay, like here's your mocha latte as you're serving it on the end of a chainsaw bar, right? Like that would make no sense. And the people at Starbucks are like, well, yeah, we can make money at it, but you're like, yeah, but it's misaligned. It doesn't. This is why we're getting too far away from our core purpose, right? So, let's see what Brandon's got to say. I'm working on dialing in on creating a larger network. Okay, very good. So for you, right, if that might be, if this was part of strategic planning, that might be part of the people component of strategic planning, right? And that could definitely help you. Because the nice thing about that, and by the way, I'm glad you brought that up, Brandon. For those of you who are interested in another one of these sessions, on Friday, I am hosting another one that's called "Is Your Networking Not Working?" So if you're having trouble with your networking not being as effective as you'd like, go ahead over to Eventbrite and you can sign up for that. But afterwards, don't multitask, right? All right. So now we talked about purpose. So we talked people, we talked purpose. Now let's talk promotion. Promotion. Get back. Eject. Okay. Purpose. People, purpose, promotion. Promotion is just simply communicating. It's communicating outwardly and it's communicating inwardly. The outward promotion means like, yes, it's things like your direct response type marketing or outbound type marketing, interruption type marketing, like where you're running ads. Maybe you're doing inbound type marketing, right? Where you're really beefing up your SEO, your search engine optimization. These are all the things that you have to worry about externally promoting and letting the world know what it is that you're doing. Internally, this is again where you're communicating with all the people, and you're going to have to do it often. You're going to have to do a lot of promotion, a lot of internal and external promotion, and letting the people inside your organization, again, your employees, your vendors, your suppliers, and communicating with them often about this strategic plan that you plan to execute. Okay. So this is all really, really important that you have to start to consider that. All right. So, Caroline is saying hello to Michelle. All right. Glad you guys are having a reunion. Hello. So I'm assuming Michelle's saying hi. All right. So that is the strategic. Those are the 3 P's of strategic planning. Now, what I want you to think about is I'm using a marketing concept here, which is called the unattainable triangle. And this is when businesses try to compete on speed, quality, or price. If you're not in the manufacturing world, you can swap out the word speed for service, right? So if you're in the service industry, you would say service, quality, or price. So quality would be like the quality of the components or quality of the ingredients, right? Like Papa John's. Papa John's wasn't really about speed. It was about speed. Domino's was about speed. Papa John's was better ingredients, better pizza, right? So they didn't try to compete on price. They weren't trying to compete on quality or on speed, but they were trying to be a decent quality of the lower price tier, right? So they could charge a little bit more and people would buy their pizza, right? Now I happen to like Papa John's. I think Papa John's pizza is, fairly decent. Although I am from New York, and I'm sorry, but New York, if they do one thing right, it's pizza, right? I'm just sorry. New York pizza is kind of hard to beat. But I'm nestled here in the Midwest now, where I think good pizza is just based on a dare. But I digress. All right. So this is the thing that I want you to think about is if you're trying to compete on all 3 of these, you're going to fail. And there's a lot of reasons why businesses, they think that they can be the best price at the fastest, best level of service at the highest quality. It won't happen, right? So I'm just letting you know, and we're going to get into more differentiation here, but I want you to start thinking about this, is that I don't want you competing on price at all. Because anything can be differentiated. I mean, for God's sake, they can differentiate water and they can differentiate salt. Like why would you buy salt when this bag is 5 cents or 10 cents cheaper, but you're going to go with Domino's or Domino sugar, right? I was using salt, but or Morton's sugar or Morton's salt. My gosh, I got them backwards. Morton's salt versus the generic salt that sits next to it. It's just the way it is because there's brand recognition, right? They don't even, they're not trying to compete on price. They've had a really good long run around, quality, and people just know them for that reason, right? There's no logical reason, but people are doing it anyway, right? They spend more for the brand. I would much rather be everyone's indirect competitor than one person's direct competitor, because the minute that I'm directly competing with someone, that is when I'm now wasting resources. And this is, of course, an extreme statement. Okay. Yes, I know it's an extreme statement, but the reason I say this is because most people compete directly by offering a little bit more for a little bit less, a little bit more for a little bit less. And before you know it, no one in the industry is making any money. And this is what happens over and over and over again. I mean, look at it. Look at the cleaning business. Look at the cleaning business. There are very low barriers to entry. And this is something I'm going to talk about here when we refer to the Porter's 5 Forces model. Porter was a really, really smart dude. He might have been a Harvard professor. I think his name was Michael Porter. But basically, if you're looking at this here, and this really isn't that important, but I'll take myself down just so you can see the whole graph. But you, at the very top here, you have your threat of new entrants. At the bottom, you have the threat of substitutes. So you got your north-south forces against your business. And then from east-west, you've got the bargaining power of buyers and then bargaining power of suppliers. And then you've got the rivalry right in the middle among existing competitors. These are all the forces that act against a business anytime people are thinking about trying to compete, right? So you're always worried about new people coming in. You're always worried about other people that could substitute products. So let's think about this in the context of a cleaning business. Well, what are the threat of new entrants? Listen, out of the dozen people on this call, the dozen of us could get on, we could all create a cleaning business before the end of the call. You know why? Because I don't know, maybe in your market it's different, but there's no barrier to entry for being in a cleaning business. I mean, we could get into the residential cleaning business. Maybe some areas might need a permit, business license or something, but here in the Midwest, it's just basically, I mean, we could have business cards printed up. We could have a website up and running in the next hour. We could have all of these things. I mean, like, we could send someone out to buy buckets and mops. We could be literally in business, within the next, hour, right? Because there's no barrier to entry for that type of business. So there's a high threat of new entrants. Or what's the threat of substitutes? Well, the threat of substitutes is doing it yourself, right? Like when I was in the property management, I mean, I have a property management company, but when I was growing that property management company, the biggest threat for me is not other property managers. It was the guy or the gal that thought they could do it themselves. That was my biggest competitor. We look at the bargaining power of buyers or the bargaining power of suppliers, like the people who want to buy from you. What is their bargaining power? Could they go, but your competitor, he's offering 3 cents less, or for this thing, can you match that, or can you go below that? Can you beat that price? Right? So the buyer has a lot of bargaining power, right? That reduces your pricing ability. What about bargaining power of suppliers, where the suppliers really have a lock on the components, maybe the cleaning components, right? This is what I'm talking about. This is in the terms of the Porter's 5 forces. So you have to think about this. And again, the moment I start competing head to head, and generally that's going to be on price, is the moment I start wasting resources. So, and most people will compete on price, right? And because they don't know any different. Let's face it, if you didn't know anything about me, and you say, and someone described me as a business coach, which again, we've been through that. But let's say for argument's sake, someone else described me as a business coach and someone over here describes them as a business coach, and I'm $5,000 a month and this next person is $500 a month. And let's say that you could afford both, right? And you don't know any other decision. Would you go, well, I mean, should I go with that really expensive guy? I mean, he's a lot more. He's 10 times more than the other guy, right? So that is where you start it's not knowing anything else. The lowest price a lot of times has a competitive advantage. right? But if you know more about me and you go, well, he's not a business coach, he's actually a strategist. And that's a very different skill set than just a simple coach, right? Coaches are good, coaches are necessary, but strategy work is different. And that's where you have to start not differentiating or not competing on price, making price decisions. And this is what happens when you start making pricing decisions based on what other people are charging. And I hear this all the time in marketing. Like, hey, I want to start a marketing company. What should I charge? What are other people charge for this? Oh, okay. I mean, rather than based on the value that you bring to the table. So think about that. Think about the value that you bring to the table before you start pricing. Because the minute your value equals your price, you are on the chopping block. So again, Madison, for example, you're going to be building an edition, and if people value that edition, they go, "Oh my gosh, this is such an this is the edition that I've wanted my whole life, and it's going to cost $500,000 to build." Right? To them, that value better be very much in excess of $500,000. Because if they say, oh yeah, it was $500,000 and it was worth every penny, I would pay 3 times that because I'm so happy about this, right? The minute the value equals the price, you are in danger. And I'm just telling you, the value has to massively exceed the price for people to just say, oh yeah, this is a no-brainer. Of course I would do it, right? So how can you increase the value, not lower the price? Another thing is offering discounts for low value reasons. Oh, hey guys, it is Taco Tuesday, so I'm going to lower the price of my shampoo by 50 cents. What in the world does one have to do with the other? Why are you lowering your prices on Black Friday just because everybody else is doing it? That's silly. Don't offer discounts. If anything, add on value. Say, hey, yes, my shampoo is $50 a bottle, but for Black Friday, I'm going to throw in this additional thing. It's still $50, but I'm gonna throw in these extra 2 samples, 1 lotion and 1 some other potion, right? Whatever. Not to make fun of it. I'm just saying, like, throw in additional things rather than discounting your price. Add value rather than discounting, because discounts are just another way of competing on price. Make pricing decisions based on what you think you should charge, right? No, what value are you bringing to the table? What are they going to value? And people often default to cutting price instead of stacking on value. Like I was talking about, you need to make sure that you're pricing your stuff in excess of the value, like 5 to 10 times in the mind of the client and the avatar. All right. So how do you avoid competing? You avoid competing by don't assume that everyone wants the lowest price. Let me ask you guys something. If you were going to, let's say, for example, that you needed a heart surgeon for someone that you love deeply. Okay? Could be a child, could be your spouse. Are you going to want the cheapest heart surgeon, the fastest heart surgeon, or the best heart surgeon? Right? Think about that. Go ahead and answer. Let me know what you'd like to do. I'm going to go ahead and take a drink here. Let's see. Price would not be the primary consideration for me as a customer. Value would be the most sought. Yeah, Marlene, and because you're an educated customer, that's true. And many people are educated, but you've got to give them a reason, a basis for that value. Okay. The best, of course, right? Yeah. You would want the best surgeon, right? So again, most people will seek value, but you've got to make that value very apparent. And this is where you have to start thinking about this and you think strategically. So, again, we talked about the going into the cleaning business, but again, differentiate yourself with your core purpose, your ideal client avatar, and your core offering. And you do that by differentiation. Well, what are some ways to differentiate? You can differentiate on your leadership, on how you run your organization, how you are as a leader, because again, the leader determines the culture. The leader determines the core values, and the core values determine what? The company culture and the company brand, right? So that's what I'm saying. The company culture and the company brand have an inextricable link. You can also differentiate yourself by your different attributes. Attributes would be something like customization, right? What burger franchise will let you have it your way? What burger franchise, go ahead and answer, what burger franchise will let you have it your way? This might be something only maybe the Americans can answer. Okay, I'll let you answer that. Or which car company has the ultimate driving machine? Which car company has the ultimate driving machine? You can answer either one, right? So those are attributes. Those are different attributes that people know, right? That's right, Madison. Burger King lets you have it your way. And out of the dozens of burger joints that there are, you knew that's how they came to me. Like yeah, you can have it your way. And they've been talking about that for years. Whereas, yeah, now and then all of a sudden the other ones, it's like, hey, take off the lettuce, put on onions, whatever. But the thing was, Burger King started that. They started that back when I was a kid, right? So the ultimate driving machine is BMW, because they are looking for car enthusiasts who love to drive aggressively. Like they love, that's an attribute for them. Being first or having a company heritage is a way to differentiate yourself. The way you even produce your products. So like one of the things that's a big differentiator for me is how much I read. I read 41 books last year. I read 42 books this year. Yay, one better, right? But roughly that's a book about every 10 days. I also published 5 books this year, like I mentioned. The reason I'm saying that is because my level of production is an attribute that people go, wow, he's spending a lot of time in reading and research that could benefit me as a business owner or as a coach or someone else who maybe wants to hire me, right? But that level of production or how you produce your product is really important. Let's go back to the cleaning example. There are some cleaners who only use earth-friendly products, right? And you've heard that before, right? So maybe that could be a unique way of producing how you do your thing, right? Your core purpose, how you deliver your core purpose. Ways not to differentiate. Price, unless you're the highest. I'm just telling you that's not a way to differentiate, because, and I'm going to make this point at the very end, it's too easy to replicate. Or, oh, we are so customer focused. Is that really all that differentiated? That's really not making a big, bold promise. What about quality service? Oh, we are the best. We will offer the best service. Anybody can say that. But something that someone else can easily replicate is not a way to differentiate. So if your competitor offers a 30% coupon, right? Could you offer the same? Could you offer a 32% coupon? Yeah, it's too easy to replicate. So that's why I'm saying, like, price, customer service orientation, all this stuff, it's too easy to replicate. So you don't want to differentiate on something that someone else can easily replicate. All right. So let's keep moving on. So that was the process. We talked tactical, we talked strategic. We're going to come back to some other areas, and because I know we kind of took a long detour there. We're still in the middle of the Viper methodology. Let's talk about execution. So we'll speed up here just a little bit. But the execution piece, a good plan violently executed now is far better than the perfect plan that's executed next week. So this is the thing. Oh, Brandon, you said BK. All right. Sorry, I missed you, Brandon. And Madison said Burger King. That's right. So this is the thing. Like, I love this quote by General Patton, because he said that, a good plan violently executed now is better than the perfect plan executed next week. This is where you're like, perfect is the enemy of done. And you sometimes have to get going on a decent plan. And the reason why that I put this piece specifically of execution in the Viper framework is because most plans fall apart in their execution. You could have the best strategic plan, but not execute it worth a crap. And the reality is, I know a lot of business owners who have this problem with having too many things on their to-do list, right? And I know who you are. I could tell you probably on this call who you are, right? But Marlene says, oh, best. Yeah, thank you, Marlene. Yeah, but the point is, like, the most plans fall apart in their execution, and the reason for that is because you have too many priorities, right? Who of you out there has got that list of like 37 items that you're going to do today, right? Come on. I know if I had 3 hands, I'd put them all up, because that is definitely me. And if I have this big, massive to-do list, I'm going to feel so much more productive because I've got all of this stuff on there, even if I don't get it all done, right? So having too many priorities has the same impact as having none. And I'm just telling you that I was able to be so hyper productive this year because I was really dialed in on the things that I really wanted to get done this year. Publishing the Time Wealthy Advantage, publishing the lead generation guide, publishing the sales guide, publishing the strategic one sheet guide, and then the accounting guide. Like all of those books that I got out there, it was because I was hyper focused on getting those things done. And I did a lot of other things as well. And I spent a lot of time with my family. But I'm just saying, like, this is where having too many priorities has the same impact as having none. This is why I like to boil my stuff down to a daily 5. Now, the daily 5, in terms of execution, this is where I have up to 5 highly specific actions that you can take, which will move the needle towards your vision or your strategic plan, either one. Okay. But the point is that you want up to 5. For me, it's 3. And this right here is part of my daily 3, right? Like being on a call with you guys, right? It's part of my lead generation, and let people know what it is that I do. Again, if you want to, the fastest way to build trust among people who don't know you is to demonstrate competence. Maybe I've demonstrated some competence to you, like I know what I'm talking about a little bit. But this is, or at least I'm giving you a framework in terms of how to organize your thoughts, right? So again, what I'm saying is like this is part of my daily 5, or basically daily 3. What's not on there? Check email, check voicemail, right? That's like open my my mail from yesterday. Like that's not anything that is it important? Sure. But it's not on my daily 5. It's not on my daily 5 list of activities. So I'm just saying like these are the up to 5 highly specific actions. So that is execution. So I want you to boil them down just to the 5 needle moving activities that are going to make the biggest difference for you. And then finally is the reporting piece. The reporting function is, it's made up of 2 components, lead metrics and lag metrics. Your lead metrics are based on your actions and your activity. Your lag metrics are the results of those actions and activity. Again, like I have no control at all about who showed up on this call, right? Now I marketed it, I promoted it, but I didn't have any way of knowing who was going to show up. None whatsoever. But so that's a lead metric. That's my actions and activities. I put something out there. I promoted it. That's my actions. The results of it, I didn't have any, I had no control over who showed up for this call. Okay. So I'm just saying like, these are the sorts of things that you have to start to consider is like, it is important to have results oriented lag metrics, but don't rely just on those because you may not have any direct control over them. You may have indirect control, but you only have direct control over your lead metrics. So I want you to have both lead metrics, your actions and activities, and your lag metrics. And I would argue that you probably have to have more lead metrics, actions, and activities that you're monitoring over your lag metrics, right? But that is up to you. All right, so that's the Viper framework. We will land the plane on that. So next, let's talk about psychology. And this is the mental and emotional side of the business, right? The systems are important, but systems are only going to get you so far. So we talk systems. Now let's talk psychology. Psychology has varying components. There's the individual and personal psychology, and there's the business and organizational psychology. And when you're looking at personal psychology, you're looking at things like self-worth and self-management, limiting beliefs, things like that. That's all the stuff that goes on in our individual psyches, right? And it's all the good stuff and all the head trash, right? It's a sock drawer of stuff that's going on in our personal psyches. But again, it's just that individual psychology that we're not going to really address today, but the organizational psychology is broken down into external and internal psychology, right? So from the personal psychology side, I just want you to start thinking about this in terms of presuppositions. This is the only part of the individual stuff that I'm going to talk about. But I want you to think about some things, like what are some things that would prevent you from hitting your goals? That is really, really important, because when you start to think about in advance of what some things are that would prevent you from hitting your goals, then you can start to watch for those things. So say, for example, that you are going to try to lose 10 pounds over the next 6 weeks, right? You probably need to think about, well, okay, I need to stop eating pizza on Thursdays, and my neighbor always brings pizza and beer over on Thursdays to watch football. So I'm probably going to have a conversation with him, right? Start thinking about this so you can enroll those people into this plan. Don't just come up with the plan and don't tell anybody. You've got to enroll other people. When I enrolled into the PhD program, I told my bride and said, hey, what are your thoughts about this? And she's like, well, what would it take? I said, I don't know. Like, let me find out like what kind of, what kind of additional hours this is going to put on me. And I don't want to take that away because, again, I'm 53. We've got a 3-year-old daughter. We've got a 20-year-old son and a 17-year-old son. And I still want to spend time with all of them. But the thing is that I want to make sure, but this is also really important to me. So I enrolled her into that. And right now we're kind of in the thick of things because it's really busy time in school, but I needed to enroll her into that so she knew, like, she was on board with it in advance. So I want you to start thinking about, like, what are some things that could prevent you from hitting your goals? So that enrollment piece is really important. So when you're thinking about, the personal psychology, I want you to think about that from that perspective. Like, again, what are some things that could hold you back individually that from whatever strategic plan that you're going to be putting in place? So let's talk about business. Again, into external and internal. When you're looking at this, the external components, I want you to start thinking about, when you're looking at the external part, which is your buying psychology, I want you to think about the buyers. And this is, remember, we talked about that back in the 3 C's of business vision, the core purpose, core values, client avatar. And the client avatar, they were broken down to geographic, demographic, and psychographic. That is where you're going to start thinking about the buying psychology. And that's where you start thinking about things like ALEA, right? Their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations and goals. Does that make sense? So understanding buying psychology is really, really important. You got to think about vendor psychology, which is things like, negotiating with your vendors. And of course, even politics comes into play when you're thinking about business psychology. In the internal side, you're thinking about management and leadership. Now, I'm going to make this big point about leadership because leadership is absolutely a differentiating factor when it comes to strategy. And when it comes to that, I want you to think of the 3 pillars model of leadership. Now, this is really critical. And I want you to think about this. Like, how many of you have ever worked for like a really good leader? I want you to think of what a really good leader that you've worked for. And maybe put one, you don't necessarily need to put their name, but put like one attribute that you loved about that leader, right? Just type it in the comments. What are some things that you should think about, right? Shervin's got a quick question here. When you are in the early stages of starting a business, should we start on lead metrics more? Yes, and that's a great question. When you're in the early stages of a business or you are trying to grow a business, you're going to be wanting, now you're using lead metrics. I want to make sure we're saying the same thing. But lead metrics are specifically related to your actions and your activities, not lead generation. However, lead generation needs to be about 60 to 70% of your daily activities. So yes, I just want to make sure we're saying the same thing because lead gen activities and lead metrics are not the same thing. Lead metrics are just any activities that you're doing, right? But I would say that if you are trying to grow your business, that you're going to be spending 60 to 70% of your day. So if you're working a 10-hour day, that's 6 or 7 hours based on lead generation. Because without leads coming in, you have no business. And that is just the way it is. So if you're interested in more of that, you can, I'll have a marketing magic session coming up again at some point, but I just want to make sure that I answer that question. Okay, so Brandon's answering the question, accountability. That's a good one. That's a really, really good one, Brandon. Madison is saying strong sense of direction and organized strategy is what I admire in other leaders. Okay, excellent. Marlene says team building. I would agree with that. Very good. So these are all like leadership traits, right? And there's lots of different traits that come up with that leadership that leaders have. I remember in the Marine Corps, we had an acronym. There's 14 leadership traits, right? And it was kind of beat into us. Like it was JJ did tie buckle, right? Justice, judgment, decisiveness, integrity, dependability, tact, initiative, endurance, bearing, unselfishness, courage, knowledge, loyalty, enthusiasm, right? Do you realize that it's been been 30 years since I've been out of the Marine Corps. But I remember those so well because all of those individual traits are really important. Now, are any of them more important than another? I would say no, but if you don't have one, it's a big deal. Now, these 3 pillars, I will say you have to have all 3 of these components of leadership, or you will not be as effective. You just won't be as effective, okay? Now, are there more? Maybe. But I'm telling you that if you don't have the trust of people, it doesn't matter how clear your vision is. It doesn't matter how well you've shared your vision or even brought them in. and had them as part of the planning process of the vision, it won't matter. And you might be the best communicator. You might be the most articulate leader ever, but if they don't trust you, they will not follow you. Let's assume you've got their trust, but your vision is not clear, but you're a great communicator. They're not even going to know why they're following you. They might follow you for a little bit, but they're not going to follow you for long. They're not even going to know why they're there. And the last piece, if let's say you have their trust and you do have a clear vision, but you're a horrible communicator, or not even a horrible communicator, it's like the equivalent of typing in all caps, or basically you just don't communicate often enough, that could make you a bad communicator, and that can make you an ineffective leader. So these are all these three pillars, and I've gone up and down. I've read, I can't even tell you, dozens of leadership books, and these three components here of these three pillars of leadership, you have to be able to have all three. There's just no way around it. So again, in terms of accountability, I would say that goes back to trust, right, Brandon? I mean, at least for me, a strong sense of direction, that's vision. Marlene, team building. For me, that would go back to trust and a component of vision, right? So again, these things here are really, really important. And I think every time I've come back with an individual thing, an individual component around leadership, to me, it always fits into one of those nuggets. Now, granted, they're a little broad, right? Especially trust, but it just comes down to those three. So why does leadership even matter? Well, I'm writing my next book called Leader Boss, which is the Time Wealthy Leader Boss. And these three components, it's caring versus candor. And if you are a boss that's really super caring, the problem is if you don't have enough candor, that you really need to have tough conversations with people, if you care too much without enough candor, is that they will walk all over you. On the other hand, if you have too much candor where you just kind of tell people the way it is and it seems like you don't care, you're going to seem like a tyrant, and people will give you no more than what's required of them. Don't ask them to work late. Don't ask them to take calls after hours. Don't ask them to put in 1 extra minute of overtime because they don't want to do it, right? And that's the problem, right? They will give you no discretionary effort whatsoever. So you have to have an equal mix of both caring and candor. And leadership absolutely does make a difference when you're looking at level 5 leader companies. And this is something that was defined by Jim Collins when he wrote the book Good to Great. He's written Good to Great, Great by Choice, Built to Last, a bunch of other books. But he recognized a level 5 leader company. A level 5 leader, most specifically a level 5 leader, is someone who operates at a very, very high level. For those of you who've read John Maxwell and Jim Collins both use the phrase level 5 leader, but they define them in different ways. But basically, it's a leader that puts the organization in front of themselves. They're not about taking glory. They're not about siphoning off millions of dollars that's unearned, right? They've earned a high salary, but they also recognize these are the types of servant leaders that we've often heard about. These are great leaders. And level 5 leader companies are significantly more profitable. They grew much faster over the period of time that was measured, and they had a much stronger company culture. And you want to guess why they had a stronger company culture? Wow, here it comes again, defined core values. Oh my God, it's like a bad penny, right? So it just shows back up again with these defined core values. So I'm just saying, like, for those of you who might have to work on your leadership a little bit, please don't let this be the only thing where you learn your leadership. Get in there, get into your leadership books, and really start to build your leadership levels up. Because look, or your leadership skills up. Because look at what happens here. These are just 4 sample companies: Amgen, Intel, Microsoft, and Southwest that I pulled out of Great by Choice by Jim Collins and Martin Hansen. So these companies over a course of 30 years grew 24 times faster than the overall stock market. Look at Southwest Airlines, 63 times the market. What are you kidding me? These are really barn burner returns. And these companies also frequently land on the 100 best places to work list that frequently represents the highest stock returns. So leadership makes a huge difference. And that's because growth requires change, and leadership is what manages that change. Okay, so we talked about systems. We talked about psychology. Now, both of those elements serve the 4 core functions of business. Now, let's get into the 4 core functions really quickly. So the 4 core functions are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your customer's journey through your company happens in that order. Okay. So let me ask you, are all of these things, the lead generation, it's your marketing, it's your outbound, it's your networking, right? It's basically letting the world know that you're out there. Sales obviously closes the loop. It's like, okay, hey, they raise their hand, they show up, they want more information, right? Sales closes that conversation, turns them over to operations and fulfillment. You do the thing, you build the website, you bake the cake, you put on the roof, whatever it is, and then you have the accounting function. Well, let me ask you something. Are all of these things the same skill set? No, of course they're not the same skill set. That's even a crazy answer, a crazy question. But the thing is, many business owners are trying to do all four of these things and they're not doing them all very well, right? So I want you to think about, so let's start talking about this strategic plan, okay? So again, we talked about process a little bit in terms of the strategic plan. So we're going to get a little granular here, but have you ever thought, wait, hang on a second, I've got all these ideas, but I have no idea when I'm going to find the time to implement them? This is where you got that strategic plan where you need to start thinking about bringing in people. Now, if you want to grow, I want you to think about this in terms of bringing in the right people and what kind of leader that you are. Okay, so just think about this in this context when you're trying to grow and you're trying to come up with this, you're thinking about your leadership ability. I want you to think about this. I'm just going to go through this rather quickly. There's 8 overall leadership dimensions. 8 leadership dimensions. So let's take a quick look at the pioneering type leader at the 12 o'clock position there. A pioneering leader, it has a very strong action bias, meaning that they're going to take action very quickly and they're often highly innovative and they can be super persuasive, right? But they don't often provide a lot of emotional support or a lot of support after the fact. On the other side of the motivation, they stir up all this motivation, but then they leave people unsupported, right? Conversations can be very one-sided, leaving their followers behind. So as I go through these real quickly, I want you to think of what kind of leader that you might be, or a combination, like somewhere in between, right? The humble leader down at the 6 o'clock is much more intentional, and they're people-pleasing. They're very, very reliable, and they love routines, but they can often take forever to move on something. They often take forever to make decisions, right? Because they don't want to be wrong, right? They often think if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Which closes them off to new ideas, and it can really be a problem if you're in a fast-paced, moving environment, right? It leaves them vulnerable to changes in the market. Let's look at the affirming leader. That's at your 3 o'clock, okay? Your affirming leader, they are amazing collaborators. They're warm. They do really well at building a supportive environment, and which makes them extremely approachable, right? But they tend to have an aversion for conflict, which means that they avoid tough conversations, and they're more interested in relationships than they are results. So they tend not to see the inefficiencies that might be obvious to other people, right? So guess what? Because they don't really want to address the conflict, they don't want to address the problems that are obviously, need to be changed, and they're very resistant to change. So the last one is a resolute leader. The resolute leader is very strong-willed, and they are persistent. And they tend to give others courage in very tough times. They speak their mind. They love to debate. They love to solve problems, and they're highly driven towards personal mastery. And everyone, unfortunately, they start at a 1 in terms of trust. Right? Like 1 to 10, everyone's a 1. Like they're naturally skeptical, right? They are natural skeptics, and they have a strong opinion about how things should work, right? And again, because they love to solve problems, they tend to do that on their own with very little collaboration. So there's 4 other types of leaders that kind of fill in the gaps in between those 4. I'm not going to go through all of them, but again, I want you to start thinking about this. Maybe where do you land somewhere in there? What kind of leader do you think that you land at? And the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because leadership is such a huge differentiator in terms of strategic planning. So when you're coming up with your strategic plan and you're thinking of people, I want you to start thinking of who can do the thing that you need, not how do I do it. That's the default mechanism that I see a lot of times when business owners are putting stuff together, is they think of, cool, how am I going to do this? Not how can I get it done? The last little piece here, and then we're going to be wrapping up here, so just give me a couple extra minutes, is coming up with a business vision timeline. The business vision timeline is, again, this is the overall part of the strategic plan, and this is how you do this planning. I like to break things down in between a 36-month and a 12-month business vision timeline. The timeline is broken down into what I refer to as RPM, and that is revenues, profits, and metrics. So what are the revenues in year 3 that you're going to have in your business vision from month 25 to month 36? Then I want you to think from your 12-month business vision timeline, your revenues, profits, and metrics, what's the next 12 months going to be? Now here I'm going to make this quick point here, is that most people vastly overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year and vastly underestimate what they can accomplish in 3 years. So I want you to make your 3-year business vision a knock the cover off the ball goal, vision, whatever you want to call it. Make your 1 year maybe 10 or 20% more than where you're at today. Okay? So I don't want you creating this crazy big 12-month goal. Maybe, okay, great. Maybe if you hit it and you can always readjust. But my point is, most people vastly overshoot what they think they can accomplish in 1 year. So I want you to make that 3-year goal something a little scary. And keep in mind that profit margins tend to compress as the business grows. Okay. So generally, if you're budgeting for like a 30% profit margin in year 1, generally when you get to year 3, margins very rarely go up. So I want you to bake that into the cake and think, okay, how can I make sure that margins actually stay the same or do get better, right? But they do tend to compress over time. And this is also where you're going to start to put together a pro forma balance sheet and pro forma income statement. All that means pro forma, if you've ever heard that, it just means projected. What is your projected balance sheet going to be for 12 months out? And what is your projected income statement going to be for 12 months out and 36 months, for both balance sheet and income statement? So that is the business vision timeline. You got 36-month timeline, your 12-month timeline, your revenues, profits, metrics, your 12-month revenues, profits, metrics. The last thing you're going to do is break that 12-month down into 90-day projects. And you're going to break that 90-day projects. Obviously, it's going to be in line with your 1-year vision. You're going to break those 90-day projects down into monthly goals and weekly goals. And you're going to break those weekly goals down into, that's right, your daily 5. Oh my gosh, where did you hear that from? Yep, you heard that in the execution piece, right? So we're just about done. We went through the systems, we went through the psychology, we went through the 4 core functions of business, we went through the strategic plan. I know we covered a lot and I threw a lot at you. The last little bit here is the resources. We're almost done. Here is it's kind of a funny story. Not funny, because it was funny, but this is like unbelievable. This guy here, if you see his photo, he is a bank robber. He's actually holding a gun to the teller, and he is not even making any attempt at all to cover his face. And it's interesting. So this guy, there's 2 guys actually, MacArthur Wheeler and Clifton Johnson. They robbed 2 banks at gunpoint without any attempt to disguise themselves, or disguise their face. So what they did, though, of course, the cops covered them. They captured them pretty quickly within a few days, and they were shocked. They said, "Wait, I don't understand. How did you find us?" And the cops like, "You made no attempt to cover your face." He's like, "Yeah, but I covered my face in lemon juice." They were so convinced that covering themselves in lemon juice would actually make them invisible. Right? Have you ever written in lemon juice, right? The invisible ink? Well, they were convinced that if they covered themselves in lemon juice and their face in lemon juice, that that would make them invisible to security cameras. So this tripped off a whole study of these 2 researchers by the name of Dunning and Kruger. And they said, we've got to get into this. We got to look at this. And how does false confidence play a role for people just in general? So when you look at this graph, you've got competence on the bottom and you've got confidence on the vertical axis. So when everybody starts, they start out down here on the low end of the scale, right? They don't know anything and you got very low confidence. But as you start out on something, you gain confidence very quickly, right? It shoots right up to the peak of Mount Stupid. And unfortunately, it's called Mount Stupid because you don't know what you don't know. Then all of a sudden you get to a point where you start realizing pretty quickly, usually, that even though your competence hasn't really increased very much, your confidence kind of shot through the roof. But then you realize you don't know what you don't know, and you start into the valley of despair. That's when it comes all crashing down, and you start realizing you don't know what you don't know, right? And when you get down to the bottom now, this is where a lot of business owners give up. This is where a lot of business owners get distracted, and they realize it's a lot more work than they originally thought. So it's like, okay, we're going to keep on going. But if I keep on it, I keep building my competence, I keep working on my knowledge, I work up the slope of enlightenment, and eventually I'll get to the plateau of sustainability. The point here is to have a support system. Okay. And that's what I'm going to offer you guys today for no cost. You can join the school community on Strategic Boardroom. If you'd like to go to school, you can go there. And thank you, Michelle. So just click on that link if you want to join me there. There is no cost to join right now. So if you are interested and you'd like to be part of this community and just continue conversations just like this, I'd love to have you there. So that is everything that I have. If you guys want to, if you guys have any last bit questions, I'll wait around for just a hot second, but just go ahead and type them in the comments. All right. I don't see any questions coming through. All right, everybody, that is all that I have. So thank you very, very much for sticking around. And this has basically been the classroom. I look forward to seeing you guys in the boardroom. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you. Thank you, Brandon. The marketing management. Okay. Yeah. Message me, come over to the school community, and I'll be happy to have more conversation around that, Madison. Absolutely. Brandon, very good. Shervin, Happy New Year's. Yes, Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you, guys. Be safe tonight. Make good choices. See ya.